at some point it kind of just turns into a big chase. And that is one of my big bugbears with like science fiction movies. There are almost no it's like science fiction movies that kind of resist this temptation of turning into generic action in the second half. The idea being like we can start a movie with the big idea and the talking, but at some point somebody has to run and something has to explode. Otherwise, audiences will not like it. There's probably something to this. Like if you just made like just a purely talky science fiction movie, it's gonna be something like Ex Machina or I'm blanking on one right now. There's one where a bunch of engineers build a time machine and the entire thing is just them being driven insane by the causality. I'd have to look up the name afterwards, but like there's a couple that don't turn into just outright action, but almost all of them do. One example that I've got is The Island, which starts off as this dystopian science fiction where people live on this island and there's a lottery for people to go to paradise, and then there's a sinister secret. And then in the second half, it's just people running and things exploding and people shooting guns. And like this is like that, right? Like it's very much the most generic action you've ever seen. The company doesn't behave like a company. The government kind of is kind of pretty generic. Like every other evil government is after you kind of movie you've ever seen. And it just stops being the same kind of movie, I thought. That is the part I think that is really dragging down the movie, and that is prevents the movie from doing anything interesting in the second half. And that is kind of my big bugbear with this one.
I do see where you're coming from, but for me, the way that the antagonist threat was maintained in the third act with the action scene, like I said before, it kept it more exciting and more fun to watch. I think that's the like key word is fun. Yeah, you can still make a fun if you kind of like keep the structure of how you did like the same structure that you did in like Act One and Act Two. However, I'm not mad at them kind of like drifting away to like the whole action schlock, as you would say.
The problem is it's generic. It doesn't have much to do. Like yes, he's trying to break into the lab, and they're trying to stop him, right? In that sense, it still has something to do with the first half, but it's not the same kind of movie, right? The first one is kind of a mystery, and it's about characters trying to outsmart each other, and notably the main character trying to outsmart himself. And I think that is what gets your attention. Like if you're into this movie at all, that's how they get you. And then afterwards, it's just chases.
I think they kind of give you hints that it's going to end up like that because from the beginning, Act One, where he's training. Well, when I saw that scene, because in the beginning I didn't think it was going to be like that. So when I saw him training, I thought, oh, that's a bit random. It went from that to him being like a whole ninja. So I was like, okay. But then obviously
Yeah.
throughout, I was like, oh, okay. So his skills were actually they're actually put to use.
That's the scene where he trained, like after his first job, he trains with his handler,
Yeah,
like, or his friend, and he's using like that staff fighting technique, right, as a workout. And then in the end, he defeats the bad guys using that martial art, right?
yeah.
So yeah, it's set up and payoff, and it's nice that they did this. But I'm just saying it didn't have to be this way. The entire thing could have been a mind game. The entire thing could have been a puzzle.